Welcome to the next CIRF report. CIRF stands for Collective Influence Report and Forecast. We're forecasting energy, but also giving you a solution on how best to behave. We're looking at a new moon in Sagittarius, plus a whole lot more, like literally. I know I always say that, but there is some big energies you need to be aware of between November 29th and December 4th, 2024. It is time to surf the breaking point, calling this either the breaking point or the collapse of the wave function. This is a quantum mechanics term. I don't claim to be an expert in quantum mechanics, but from what I understand, collapse of the wave function is when all the possibilities, when someone observes something or measures something, just that awareness on the object takes away all the different possibilities, because before the collapse of the wave function, the status is all the possibilities. Till you put eyes on or a measurement stick to it, then boom, all the possibilities disappear and it becomes one thing. That's my understanding. It could be wrong, but I can't tell if this overlap between the Dreambot, the I-Ching, and the Tropical Astrology is pointing to a break point or more of a quantum thing like a collapse of the wave function. Let's see here. As I mentioned, we have a grand fire trine that's mainly with Sun, but it's obviously also the new moon. The new moon, North Node, and Mars this week, and this is the grand fire trine number 2 out of 3 for our energy window, which we'll talk about that. So big, powerful energy just with the new moon in Sagittarius. Big, fiery energy with a grand fire trine on the North Node with Mars. Huge. Then we have a T-square that develops with Saturn, but on the continuum of Mercury retrograde opposition to Jupiter retrograde, and there's a lot more in that. This is a very special alignment that's happening all week, but it comes to a threshold or a climax at the very end of our CIRF week. This is Mercury opposed Jupiter, and then the Dreambot says the Dreambot is the bot. For those of you who don't know, it's on the web. It goes, when you push the button, goes out and looks for dream material all over the world, brings it back, and then it looks for trends, like big spikes of thought or words that are unusually high. Well, it has been and have been increasing in a timeline references, and that's why even though the I-Ching says excessive pressure, which can be very well explained by T-square, contraparallels, grand fire trine, new moon in Sagittarius, and the Mercury opposed Jupiter. But there's a time reference to it. And that's why I'm thinking there's this collapse of the wave function. Perhaps also this sort of over the threshold into 4D, 5D, whatever D we're heading to, or some of us are heading to. Anyway, it's a very, very pivotal time, and the energies do support it. So I can't wait to tell you all about these. Let's get started. And CJ Star Monkey 73 deserves a big shout out for the best comment award. Says it's getting downright delirious out there. And there was almost like a collapse of the comments. And this is not a blame. This is not a point the finger at all of you. I know that some of you are putting comments out and they're just not putting them up. I know because you're telling me. And this is sick. I mean, it was a huge disintegration of comments. So, man, I don't know about YouTube. What do you all think? I heard it was on the ropes for a reduction in ads or something. I don't know, but I'll keep putting videos out there, and shout out to CJ Star Monkey. Sorry. Anyway, let's go to the Dreambot. How about that? Let's start there. All righty. Number one word, scent and skip. These are representing our two memes, the top word of each meme. In the red meme is Mercury. So things like communicating, especially like, so this one is sent. Obviously, that goes with email, sent email. That's communication. And then thinking. There's also, even the word think is in there. So this whole red series is all about Mercury, and that's important because Mercury's retrograde, but it also goes opposite of Jupiter and completes the mind, or it fights with the other part of the mind. There's a lot to talk about there, but that's where the collective is on this Mercury or mind. And then the yellow areas are timeline references and a lot more references. So like last, continue, since, back, and set, like ready, set, go, that kind of stuff. I mean, there's tons more words than last time. It's not just words like November, which are very predictable, and years, very predictable. But anyway, timeline references. That's why I think it has something to do with the quantum collapse of the wave function. Question mark. All right, here's your overview of the eclipse cycle. We're inside of the overall Libra eclipse. That's based in Tropical Astrology. That happened on October 2nd. And now every one of these new moons is important, and we have a 30-day cycle every time we have a new moon. But it serves that eclipse cycle. So this Libra is about justice and harmony and making peace. Because next time, starting on March 29th, goes back, whips back over to Aries. It's like these cycles from war to peace in the eclipse. That's the overview there. And then we're in this little shaded area. So we have our new moon in Sagittarius. We're inside of a energy window with a cosmic bonfire. Remember that? One of our biggest, longest energy windows to date. I don't have anything yet for the follow-on energy window. Just haven't had time. I've been busier than ever. And I'm sure a lot of you have too. Okay, we are changing the guards in terms of the month. So this is November, the very end of November. Things to, like Mercury retrograde. This is the line for that. And it started at the end of last CIRF week. But what is really important are some things here in the first part of December. As we move into December, we have Neptune. This is going to be in the next CIRF report. Lot of shifts happening. The first one is Neptune is going to go direct, stop being retrograde. And we have Mars doing the opposite right about the same time. Next CIRF report, Mars will go retrograde. And then we'll have Mercury and Mars going retrograde at the same time. So Mercury is over here, and Mercury going direct or station direct will happen right at about the time of the full moon. Now, technically, I went and looked at the time of the full moon. Mercury is still retrograde, but the reason why it's important is did I say new moon? I meant full moon. If I said new moon, whatever. This is the full moon on the 15th of December. It's in Gemini. Who rules Gemini? Mercury. Well, Mercury is just at the end of its retrograde, going station just a couple of hours after the full moon. And so that's really interesting. And we'll be looking at that here in a couple of CIRF reports. But now if we get into just this week, there's something I want you to pay attention to is all these horizontal black lines here. There's a lot more of them than normal, especially this week. Look at all these. These represent inclination exacts. So whether or not we're in a parallel, meaning that the inclinations are the same, or we're in contraparallel, where we're on the opposite ends of the eclipse line. Right? So when we're on the opposite, it's the contraparallel. And those are conflicting, much more conflicted. Now, when you have an alignment, now that's true even if these planets, let's say like this line here is Mercury and Mars. Mercury contra-parallel Mars. Well, even at that time, there is no Mercury like trine Mars or Mercury, not yet. There will be, but not yet. But it's still, these energies are still conflicted. Now, it's what's really important is when you have an alignment such as Venus, that's this week, Venus conjunct Pluto, or inside the orb. This goes exact on the 7th, by the way. But it's also Venus parallel Pluto. So what that means is that it's together, it's conjunct in azimuth, but also in intensity, inclination. So we will delineate that conjunction and know that it's whatever that archetype is, it's much more intense than what it represents. It's like an intense version of that. Whew. All right, let's get started on our day today, Thursday the 28th. Here's what's happening, the overview. Sun in Sagittarius, Sun, North Node, and Mars in a grand fire trine, even though it's not represented. I do have it represented on the next slide, but not on this one because there's other things happening. Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. Now, what will happen is Mercury will step back all the way to about 5 or 6 Sagittarius, 5 or 6 degrees Sagittarius. And that will create, Mars will also be in retrograde, staying at about 5 or 6 degrees of Leo. And that will create our third grand fire trine. That'll be later this month. But Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius is that eager pilgrim ready to explore new horizons and new horizons of the mind. We've got Mercury is a very mental oriented, very rational, very detail oriented planet, but it's in Sagittarius. So it's the more philosophical, the higher part of the mind, the spiritual part of the mind. And we have a retrograde, so it's a review. But this one is very important that I want to highlight. As Mercury retrogrades, it starts increasing its opposition into Jupiter. Well, Jupiter is also retrograde. And so we have the dueling philosophers, or what I like to represent. We're going to have problems. I got to bring this to the fore. This energy, Mercury oppose Jupiter in opposite signs, is the crossroads of truth. It represents a profound philosophical crossroads. It's a quest for truth that pulls the seeker in different directions. The challenge is us to reconcile apparent opposites, confront paradoxes, and embrace nuance. This alignment gets stronger and stronger until the climax on our very last day of our CIRF report. Not only is it opposing each other, but then it contra-parallels. Not yet, but that one, the inclination also gets opposing. So it's opposing in every regard. It gets stronger as we go, and it's the crossroads of truth. It's the dueling, dueling philosophers. So keep that in mind. On Friday, the 29th, here is, because I wanted to explain all the other stuff. Here's where I represented the grand fire trine, still in the orb, 5-degree orb between the Sun in Sag and North Node in Aries. And so a couple more days and this grand fire trine will leave. But before we do, we're going to have a new moon, Sagittarius. The big thing about this week that I wanted to show you is this long list. It's probably the longest list I've seen, at least on CIRF reports. I've seen them on natal charts, very long. But anyway, you have a lot of inclination, a lot of parallels, a lot of contra-parallels. So let's look at them. They're grouped by type. So we have the sun and its parallels and contraparallels. So overall, the sun, if we're just looking at these, feel the sun or the soul feels conflicted about what to do and which way to channel your yang energy, because the sun is in Sagittarius, very yang, very fire. It must do something. It's on a grand fire trine, so it's high pressure, high motivation, but hard to access intuitive insight. Then we have the moon, and we need to include this, but there's three parallel, contraparallel alignments for the moon. So this adds everything we talked about the above, the high pressure, high motivation, but it's emotional. Our exact same planets are from the sun that we talked about are also for the moon. That makes sense because we're closing in on the new moon. They're getting close together. But we also have Mercury, and this means it's very intense thoughts associated with interpersonal aspects, relationships, and the power and control continuum, because we have Pluto. We have intensity with Pluto. We have an intensity with relationships in Venus. Okay. And then later in the week, we'll have intensity with Jupiter. So we'll talk about that when it comes. All right. It's developing the T-square on Saturn. Now, it looked like there was a T-square on our first day, but it's an illusion. Mercury isn't retrograde far enough for a square on Saturn, and Sun isn't far enough. So we don't really have a T-square until Saturday, and this is where our T-square with Saturn starts to get conflicted. And Saturn is very disciplinarian, very challenging, and puts a pressure on both our new moon and Mercury, our thoughts, and puts a need to really heed and pay attention to these dueling philosophies, these contradictions, the paradoxes. Jupiter oppose Mercury. And here we have, on Sunday the 1st, we have the new moon in Sagittarius. I did have these circled, but whatever. It's the software again, sort of just deletes it whenever it wants to. But anyway, we're right here. This is the new moon, 9 degrees, 33 minutes of Sagittarius. Mercury looks like it's close, but it's not technically in a conjunction here. But because in the orb, Saturn is in between the degrees between the new moon and Mercury, so therefore all three are making a square to Saturn. And it's a 5-degree orb with its square over to Jupiter. So you have new moon opposed Jupiter, you have Mercury opposed Jupiter, you have new moon square Saturn, and a T-square on Saturn, and Saturn square Jupiter. So what's all that mean? Well, it's starting with the Sagittarian new moon, normally a time of fresh starts and adventurous goals. It's going to face that tension with Jupiter and Saturn. This ultimately means that the archer's aim is tested, requiring adjustment. That's mainly Saturn, requiring adjustment and realignment. But we have, if you put all of these together and you include the T-square at the time of the new moon, you get the philosopher's fork in the road. The divergent paths of belief and understanding, difficult choices may be required, but it's a Sagittarian new moon, so it's up for the challenge. It's got plenty of yang to do it. And the new moon, just the new moon part, is very initiatory. It's very new beginning. And so that adds to this, I can do it. There's positivity. Positivity in Sagittarius. There's lots of optimism in the air, even though there's challenges. It says, bring it. So the overarching archetype, in my opinion, is the hero's initiation. And this does have to do with the broader energy window. that we talked about earlier. The new moon resembles the archetypical hero's initiation, a critical juncture of challenges, choices, and growth that test and transform the protagonist. Sagittarius' heroic quest is met with Saturnian obstacles and Jupiter riddles. Through this crucible, the hero refines the sense of purpose and emerges with a deeper understanding of self and world. And because it's a new moon, I'd highly recommend you spend some contemplative time and think about some goals that you would like to make. And those goals are going to be Sagittarius. So here's some examples. Taking a long trip or planning a round-the-world trip would be a possibility. Even just planning it, not even doing it, planning it would be good. If you're going to plan a long trip, it probably behooves you to have some long, some further out time so you can prepare for it. But yeah, you can also go on the trip. That's a very Sagittarius thing as well. You could learn a new language. You could write a book in life philosophy, or write a little diary about philosophy or what you've learned recently. You could start a travel photography business. These are just examples. Create an online teaching platform. Teachers, Sagittarius, it's a higher form of teachers. This is the university, the PhD program, meditation workshops, because Sagittarius is a little more spiritual, or can be. Learn archery. How about a direct activity with the archetype? Travel magazines, educational podcasts, new spiritual practices. Nomad, that's a really good one. Create a nomad lifestyle, or create a digital nomad lifestyle. Lead adventure tour groups. These are just examples. So just to get your creative juices thinking about what goals you should make, don't bite off more than you can chew. Just pick a couple and practice being more Sagittarius. Monday the 2nd. What goes exact is Venus trine Uranus. Venus is in Capricorn. Uranus is still in Taurus. It's the radical romance. Venus and Uranus in this flowing aspect can bring sudden, magnetic, I would like to say electric, because Uranus is about electricity too. It brings a lot of twists and turns and change, unexpected, unpredictable connections. The earthy innovator, the earth sign trine, supports grounded, pragmatic change. So change to your finances, change to your relationships, big insights, and about practical matters too, because both of these are in earth signs. It's also an unconventional commitment, because Venus in Capricorn seeks stable, enduring bonds. But Uranus is introducing electrifying element of change and excitement. So tradition and innovation harmonize in relationships, aesthetics in your Taurus values. So you might feel in this energy on Monday the 2nd, enhanced creativity and problem solving, and particularly in relationships and probably finance. Practical, productive changes in values. Increases magnetism towards eccentric uniquism, or uniqueness. Uniquism. Made up a word. Tuesday the 3rd. This is the end of our Grand Fire trine, number 2. But as I mentioned before, Mercury in its continued retrograde will get to a point, probably around 12 to 11 degrees. We will start our Grand Fire trine number 3 with the North Node and Mars. Like I said, Mars, next CIRF report, will go retrograde and stay in this little area of the low degrees of Leo. And on Wednesday the 4th, this is the biggie, and this has been increasing all this week, so it's not like it's a new energy. It comes to a climax on this day, At 4:15 a.m. Central Standard Time, Mercury at 16 degrees 44 minutes in a retrograde in Sagittarius will make a perfect opposition with Jupiter at 16 degrees 44 minutes in a retrograde in Gemini. Now, I want to also show you these continued parallels, contraparallels list brings a bunch of more intensity throughout, but a lot of conflict and intense conflict with Mercury contraparallel Jupiter, both in retrograde. So once again, the dueling philosophers, they're both in retrograde, engage in a battle of wits across the zodiac. Sagittarius broad strokes clash with Gemini's love for detail. So intellectual sparring can generate ideas, but also lead to entrenched positions. Bring this to the front. Right. We also have another archetype that's possible. It's the skeptic's dilemma. Jupiter retrograde, particularly in Gemini, cast a critical eye on Sagittarius' sweeping assertions. Healthy skepticism is necessary, but can devolve into cynicism. We also have the labyrinth of the mind, because if we notice this is what I was trying to point out before. Mercury retrograde is in the sign that Jupiter is in, or that Jupiter rules. And Jupiter is in the sign that Mercury rules. So they're both planets are opposite of their home signs, and they're in the signs that the other rules. And so that's another element that brings about this labyrinth of the mind with it's still, like the dueling philosophers, but the labyrinth of the mind. So we have absolute total mind here. Yeah, it's conflicted, but that's the whole point, because there isn't such a thing as a one-sided continuum. It's everything. So the labyrinth of the mind with Mercury and Jupiter, both retrograde and mentally oriented signs, mind can become a maze of contradictions and circular arguments. And that's where truth resides, according to the Tao, according to the ancient I-Ching. It's all about contradiction. When you get to the point where there are no facts, there are only continuums, and there's only context, then you've gotten closer to the truth. Now, Mercury alone would disagree with you. Mercury alone could say, no, here's this fact and this fact and this fact. But Jupiter, with its riddles, can bring in these contradictions and paradoxes to demonstrate the limitations of Mercury. And likewise, if you're only Jupiter strong, then you're just kind of floating up in the higher mind and higher philosophies, and it's hard to come back down to the rational and the practical. So here there is a paradox right here. We've got contradictory, we have paradoxes, there's a struggle there, we've got the contraparallels, so there's energy conflicting each other. It doesn't seem so easy, but at the same time, you're getting closer to the truth because it's complete mind. So there's a whole paradox in and of this energy that I need you to see that is very, very important before Wednesday the 4th. And really all week. And all week, this energy gets stronger and stronger. And that's why this I think, has the biggest thing to do with the collapse of the wave function. If that's a thing, if I'm right, or some sort of breaking point, any breaking point or collapse of the wave function or something along those lines, I think is going to be much more mental. Now, it has a possibility of being in the physical as well, but arguably we hear that 4D, or the third density in the law of one, which is equal to the fourth dimension, or apparently, or we're in the fourth dimension going to the fifth, whatever that. I don't know who's right and who's wrong, but this is a very mental space, and it's a mental wholeness space, even though it might feel very conflicted. So you might feel in this energy a chance to expand your mind and consider contrasting viewpoints, opportunity to refine beliefs through rigorous analysis, potential for profound insights and philosophical breakthroughs. And this is like literally perfect synergy with that new moon in Sagittarius. Right? Even though Mercury is not part of the new moon, it's also in Sagittarius and, starting that opposition with Jupiter. All right, that's it for the astrology. Let's get into the I-Ching. Check this out. We have hexagram 28, excessive pressure, with change lines 2, 3, 4, and 6. Something is about to collapse. Is it the wave function? I don't know. It doesn't say. A great pressure is causing an imbalance that needs correction. Extraordinary times bring out the best and worst in people. There's another paradox. Everything is in a state of flux. This may be the moment you've been waiting for. How exciting. All right, let's bring in all these lines. Change line 2, the foundation is withering and unstable. Yet you might be ignoring the warning signs. Line 3, there's a sense of impending collapse, possibly feeling trapped in your situation. Line 4, they're experiencing strain from trying to support too much, like feeling overwhelmed by responsibilities. That sounds like a T-square on Saturn, does it not? They're probably feeling a sense of failure or decline, but this might actually be necessary for renewal. All right, we are ready for our conclusion of the influence. So let's do it. That's the best picture I could come up with for the collapse of the mental wave function. Tension in the atmosphere for sure, but wait. Strong sense of optimism arises from the new moon in Sagittarius. Which one do we believe in? Expansion or collapse? Disintegration or a world you could never imagine? Whew. Maybe it's all the same. Maybe it's determined where you put your mind. If you thought the world was polarized before, wait until you see this week. The world continues to yearn towards union, but ideologies collapse into wonderment, questions, confusion, contradictions, paradoxes. This is breeding grounds for a breakdown, but also a breakthrough. Never forget the eternal candle of hope that always persists in this thing we call humanity. All right, time for our solution. Ready? Let's do it now. Put all those change lines in and you get overview. Hexagram 20. Overview calls for composure and contemplation. That's perfect because of Mercury opposed Jupiter, getting stronger by the day. Do not underestimate the power of our pressured influence. Mindfully observe the true nature of things. We're looking for behaviors that we can enact. Take a step back and observe. That's hexagram 20. Demonstrate careful attention to detail while maintaining awareness of the bigger picture. Be contemplative and thorough in your observations. In other words, be very mindful. Be observant. Watch and wait for the right moment. Practice reflection and intercontemplation. Be visible and available to others, but do not impose. All right, now it's time to convert from tropical to sidereal. And we're going to get the rave in there too. So we go to the new moon at 9 degrees, 33 minutes of tropical Sag, and we get hexagram 9 or gate 9 of the rave mandala. That is human design. And we get Scorpio, sidereal Scorpio. This sidereal is like standing outside and looking up in the sky. That's where the new moon will be. If you could see the new moon, all you're going to see is the sun, if you can see it at all. Because in the northern hemisphere, you won't. Not at the time. Not at 12:21 a.m. on Sunday, December 1st. But anyway, hexagram 9 and sidereal Scorpio. All right, here is the rave, taming power of the small. We have line 5, faith, the trust that detailed adherence will lead to fulfillment. Loyalty to the letter of the law, the power to focus and bring value to concentration. What this says to me is akin to trust the plan, trust your plan, trust your life purpose. All right, let's button it all up. Let's look at the solution. Boom, here you go. And just before we read our interpretation, just review, we're combining or looking for the overlaps in I-Ching 20, called Overview. We also have Rave Mandala 9, line 5, which is faith and trust the plan. Sidereal Scorpio, that can be very, very concentrated, heavily obsessed even, can be vindictive. But we're going to take the best from Scorpio and apply it to our behavior set. And we have the initiatory commands of the new moon. So, given the monumental pressures and the influences this week and the possible perceptions of breakdown, we are given some poignant solutions. Sidereal Scorpio invites you to tap into your intuitive senses to properly read people and situations. This may be a week where extremes or all or nothing approaches are needed. And if you run into any setbacks, tap into your innate regenerative abilities. That's still Sidereal Scorpio. Because ruled by Pluto, that's the breakdown, breakthrough archetype. So practice it if it's warranted. If you run into any setbacks, tap into your regenerative abilities, the ability to break down, break through, and regenerate. The new moon energy is initiatory, so synergize with the fire energy this week and start moving forward proudly and confidently. But stay aware, this is more of the mental side of things, stay aware of the big picture. Don't get lost in the weeds. The rave warns us to keep faith and trust the cosmic plan, trusting that detailed adherence leads to fulfillment. Use your intuitive sense by invoking that Scorpio archetype to have faith in or know what your individual plan is so that you can obey it. Because according to the rave, obeying it is very important to feeling fulfilled in the long run. And then very, very important, according to the I-Ching, using that Mercury opposed Jupiter not to go off into getting too contradictory, too philosophical to where you can't use it, but stay back and become aware of the overview. Make sure that you're seeing more things than you're used to seeing. That's the hidden benefit of Mercury opposed Jupiter with that whole mind concept. So you can be aware of thoughts and philosophies, yes, and contradictions, but you can also be aware of what's happening around you. You have profound sense of mental acuity. Even a expectation, you're feeling that pressure to do it, the pressure to stay aware, which is good. So according to the I-Ching 20 says, yes, do that. All right, and the plant of the week brought to you by Sean Elizabeth Nelson. Big shout out to her. Thank you very much for nettle, urtica, whatever. The stinging nettle, urtica meaning to burn, is known to most everyone who has encountered it, but its apparent boundary formations and painful sting should those boundaries be crossed. Used for centuries medicinally and an excellent detox, nettle leaf, root, and tops also provide a host of nutrients. Drink your nettle tea, which is widely available, which I put in my daily tea, which is up next in my drink list after coffee is done. Anyway, with nettle, we get vitamins A and K, calcium, iron, magnesium, chlorophyll, and silica. Silica, interesting. Histamines, and some fiber maybe, and some protein. It's going to be small amounts. It has to be. Again, we're not curing any disease. We're not saying to go do that. I'm not prescribing anything. I'm not a doctor. But I know that nettle helps. At least I think I know. Well known for its protective properties, nettle can be used to establish impenetrable energetic and emotional boundaries, allowing for self-confidence, self-worth to grow and manifest. Burn nettle in a smudge bowl or hang at the threshold to expel and ward off negative energies. You can create your boundary with nettle, or you can do it internally. Release unwanted patterns and invoke a protective boundary. Nettle also provides unparalleled clarity through detox. Confirm that in my own life, but again, we're not curing anything, people. Make sure you check with your doctor. Make sure nettle is okay for you, as if they would know anything about nettle. If they do, you've got probably a good doctor, I would imagine. All right, here's your snapshot. Take a picture of this so you can make this yours. This is yours to share and use, and I hope it was useful. Enjoy your new moon in Sagittarius. I'm very much looking forward to that continuum of Mercury and Jupiter opposite each other in each other's signs. I'm also looking very much forward to the new moon in Sagittarius. It's going to be an exciting time. Are we going to have the breaking point? Are we going to have the collapse of the wave function? Probably not. Probably just an illusion. But maybe, possibly. And maybe it is dependent on putting your mind towards it. All right, I'm done talking. Enjoy. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week. Cheers.